What's your carnal theory?
Hey there, you're listening to Carnal Theory, where we talk with experts from around the world to learn how taking command of our sexual story affects our personal wellness, sexual experiences, and relationships with ourselves and others. Hi, everybody. I'm Abba.
And I'm Amanda. And today on Carnal Theory, we're sitting down with Peekaboo Collins, a sex-positive blogger and the author of the erotic short story series, Monogamy with Treats, as well as Glitch, a collection of poetry and prose. Peekaboo is known for her enthusiastic consent and sex-positive erotica that encourages healthy, pleasurable, and expressive experiences. Peekaboo, we're so excited to have a chance to chat with you. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much, you guys.
Yes, thank you, Peekaboo. So, as our listeners know, and as we've talked about, we like to start each show off with our guest giving us a carnal theory to think and talk about. And for new listeners, this carnal theory, it's something that our guest brings that's meant to challenge either a perception or presumption that we might have about something. Sometimes regarding our monthly themes, sometimes regarding their talents and expertise. And we'll ask Peekaboo to tell her theory that she's brought, and then we'll also revisit it at the end of the episode just to see if even during this conversation, if maybe our perceptions or presumptions might have changed. So Peekaboo, can you tell us what you've brought for us today to ponder upon?
Yes. My carnal theory is that people are generally more kinky than they allow themselves to believe or are willing to admit to either themselves or to others.
Yeah, I think that's really true. In that, I think it's really important. Can you help us? I think it'll lay a good groundwork for a lot of the rest of the conversation that we're going to likely explore. Can you lay down the difference between kink and fetish?
Yes. So my kind of differentiation is that a kink is something that more or less enhances an experience, whereas a fetish is more something that someone needs in order to get off. So if you've ever met, for example, a foot fetish, like someone with a foot fetish, they generally need that, and they sort of center their experiences and their whole, goals around the foot fetish. So once to me, once you have established that you have a fetish, it's very hard to kind of go back and just have, sex or an experience without that included. Whereas a kink is something that either enhances an experience, it's something that you might just enjoy. I believe they're more fluid. So you can have different ones. They can change perhaps with partners or as you grow. Yeah. So
Looping back to what you said, the theory is that people are generally more kinky than they let themselves either to believe or to admit outwardly. Why do you think that is? So you have a pretty deep experience of both writing about this as well as interacting with people because of what you're writing about. Do you have any insights of why?
I would say if there's like one kind of way I can sum it up, it's perhaps a lack of communication. I think that, especially in Western society, we are raised, we are educated, we see it in Hollywood. There's so much focus on, what's normal. And I think that to deviate away from that, what we're taught is normal, the least shameful sex, we don't really, as a society, I believe, have the tools in order to communicate. And so you might meet someone and you want to go there or explore or ask them and you don't know how to do it. I feel like there's just a general lack of communication and the skills in order to be able to communicate those desires that someone might have.
So how do you see like erotica being a means of like interacting with your own kinks? Like, does it expose them to you, do you think? Does it give you a space to access them? Does it make it feel more kinky, etc.? Things like that.
Yeah, I think that especially reading erotica, it's a very, you do have that space. And I feel like because it is more of a personal and private experience, you know, you're reading, you don't necessarily need to share what it is. You don't necessarily need to talk to anyone, or, you know, no one needs to know what you're reading. You have that safe space in order to look for and kind of educate yourself on exactly what it is that you want. And because it is, you know, generally fiction, you know, there's a kind of an extra layer of, well, this is not really real. And so, you know, let me kind of go there. And it's, I think, yeah, it's, you're able to go into a deep part of yourself through the eyes of other people.
Mm.
No, that makes sense. We talked about kink and fetish a number of months ago. That was one of our themes, and we also talked about audio porn earlier this year. Do you see a rise in these in audio porn and like the erotica writing? Do you see people looping back to these? I guess I don't want to consider them like more basic. They're still very high tech, especially with audio porn. Like that's still distributed technically. But do you see people do you see these industries growing basically versus just like video porn?
Yes. I think especially in this time where there's a lot less human interaction, I definitely think that these industries are growing. I think that also they've become a little bit more normalized, and perhaps a little bit, I mean, it's still very much a process, but they're less stigmatized. And I think that people are more comfortable exploring. And I think that with audio erotica or audio porn, it's a different avenue than just video. You know, historically it's been video and then books. With audio erotica, you can literally listen to it whenever, wherever. People who don't necessarily enjoy watching video porn or don't feel comfortable with it have a different avenue. So it's just, I feel like it's accessible, and it's kind of opened up the market to a whole bunch of other people that might not have had really access to their own exploration in that sense before.
Yeah. And Amanda, I think you were also wanting to ask, like, if we're how could we explore, like, if back to your theory, if we have these hidden or not outwardly shared desires in us, how do you think are good ways to explore that?
You mean through erotica?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that keywords in the day of the internet, you know, we have keywords, and so you can actually see, you know, the description of what might be in the story much clearer than just kind of browsing a bookstore. So I think that both audio erotica and just, you know, books, ebooks, everything, they're a lot more accessible, I guess. I keep using that word, but yeah, I mean, you can literally kind of go down a rabbit hole of a certain author and see, you know, if that's the one for them, you know, or even like with my books, like I focus a lot on non-monogamy. And so if that's something that you're interested in, you can pick up one of my books, blah, blah, blah. So I think that, you know, just the keywords and searching for something, starting maybe a little bit more vanilla if you're just getting into it. And, you know, it's a journey. So it'll, you know, if you allow it to, it'll take you on it.
Yeah, like maybe it's like ASMR or something that you start with and
yeah,
slowly dip in deeper.
Speaking of journeys, I'm curious about yours, your journey into this world of erotica, and what really prompted you to want to start being a creator within it.
Yeah, so it's a funny story, actually. So I grew up on a very, my dad was an architect when I was growing up. And so he had designed a condominium complex, and when it was finished, of course, they offered all the contractors if they wanted to live there, you know, for a discounted price. So that's where I grew up until my parents split when I was 12. And it was really a place where it was in Western Massachusetts. So a lot of New Yorkers, a lot of second homeowners, old folks. And so during the summers, it was the time where all of the grandkids of everyone would come. And so it was just like a camp. And so there was this one boy that I had a crush on. I just, for story's sake, call him Joe. And so huge crush on Joe. But of course, we're younger than 12. So it was always just this very innocent kind of flirting, whatever, you know, we didn't ever want to go there because no one was going to make the first move. And he was really my brother's friends. And so, you know, and fast forward almost 10 years, I'm in college now out in Boston, and my mom calls me, and Joe and my mom, Joe's mom and my mom had always kept in touch. And so my mom calls me and is like, Joe is visiting a cousin or a friend in Boston, and I thought you guys can reconnect. And so I was like, yeah, you know, shoot me his number. This is going to be weird. But so we met up, and that morning that we were going to see each other, I got my period. And so this whole, you know, reunion of whatever it might be was just kind of, you know, there was a little bit of a speed bump there. And although I had known him pretty much my whole life, was just not, I mean, not comfortable going there on the first night, especially. So, you know, we fooled around a little bit. We had some drinks, and it was a really nice reunion and everything. We talked all about, you know, we had kind of, you know, admitted our feelings for each other and told each other how we felt. And the next morning we spent the night together, and nothing really happened, but so the next morning I was like, well, I'm going to write what should have happened, because that could have been just such a hot story and such a hot ending, or, you know, kind of reunion to this whole huge crush that I had when I was a little girl. So I wrote this amazing erotica of this couple that, you know, it was based on the true story. And so they go to a bar, and, you know, she gets there early. So she, of course, like, you know, has a cocktail. She's super nervous and kind of freaking out. And so she's a little buzzed by the time he gets there. He finally gets there, and they, you know, catch up a little bit. And then she excuses herself to the bathroom because she's just like, I need a minute. So she goes to the bathroom, and she hears the door open and close behind her. And she's, you know, it's early enough in the night where she's like, there's no one here. Like, who's following me into the bathroom, or who's going to the bathroom? So it's him, and they end up, you know, fucking in the bathroom, and this whole thing. So I showed a few people that story, and they were like, this is really good. Like, you know, not only the story, but how it's written, and, you know, you should do this. And so it was probably even 5 years after that I met a long-term partner that I still have. And he was just like, you should do this. Like, you know, if you want, I've always enjoyed writing and being creative, and, you know, talking about sex. I've always been very comfortable and open. So I was like, I think I'm going to do it. And yeah, the rest is kind of history.
Nice. And how do you think that this new, maybe not new, but like your relationship with this art form, or this like form of erotica, is like so different now that you're the creator of it? And then like this one example is a very personal story, but how does your relationship like kind of shift when you're the creator versus the reader? What do you put into it, and what does it give you back there?
I still, and probably always will, have, I like to write from my own experiences. And then what I like to do is, in order to kind of make them fiction, I mean, they are, but in order to make them fiction so that I can say it's just a work of fiction, as, you know, I sometimes will change the details, or I'll, you know, like I did with that first ever story, you know, kind of change the ending to what I wish it would be. So there's a lot of exploration through that, but I still always like to remain, you know, kind of pulling from real life experiences.
And I wanted to pull in at some point just a couple of my recent favorites of like your short bits that you throw up on your social media to throw out a yell there for people to check it out.
Yes.
So this is from Peekaboo, if you ever wondered if I meant something in a sexual way, the answer is yes. That's just, maybe we should have said that at the top. That's the tone of everything.
Yes.
And then just in terms of like empowerment, to underline also what we're about, Peekaboo says, I think the word vulva should always be capitalized. They are fucking magical.
Magical.
Yes. And those are maybe some of the more tame moments on the account, but I wanted to throw some in at some point. Do you have some recent favorites?
Ooh,
You want to drop?
Yeah, let me scroll.
And then we can get more into your process.
Yeah, I mean, so what I like to do is I like to tweet sort of my thoughts. And so those are two of the thoughts that you just read. And then I also will post just, what I've written, just kind of promote my book and everything. The reason actually why I started such a platform on Instagram is because, Amazon, which is where I sell my books, doesn't allow, because it's, adult content, it's erotica, they don't allow advertising. So I can't pay for any advertising to get the book out there. And so, and same with Facebook, Instagram, I'm not able to pay for any marketing. So I'm like, well, how are people going to know that I even exist aside from start this community? And then it was more, I mean, it's really grown, and it kind of always has been, but it's grown into, as you were saying in my intro, the sex positive, self-love, that kind of whole thing. So anyways, let's see.
And feel free to read a snippet from your book too.
Okay. Let's see. One of my favorites. The other day I watched your hands smooth down the front of your shirt, and it took everything I had not to put my hands on you too. Oof. That one just like,
I remember that one too.
that I feel for, so I have a very, like, touch is one of my love languages. So I'm just always, and especially during this whole quarantine time, my idle hands are just, they need to roam and feel. So that one's definitely, yeah. I mean, I'm always just kind of like, don't touch them, don't touch them, don't touch them. This is another one that I like. The sting was immediate, and I wished like hell to feel his hand rub hard where it made contact to soothe my aching flesh.
I love that.
Yeah. So I like just, little one-liners. I also, I get a lot of inspiration just from seeing things too. So there was one I remember, it was about the brim of this guy's hat. I literally was just walking by a store, and inside, I was outside, and there was a couple inside, and they were waiting for something. I think it was a restaurant. And so he's sitting in the windowsill, and she's just standing kind of in between his legs, and she goes to kiss him, and he's wearing a baseball cap. So the brim was in the way. And, as I'm walking by, he turns, well, I don't even think this happened. Actually, I think I totally made it up, which is what I do. But so I'm thinking to myself, like, he should, fix the brim of his hat so she can really kiss him. And so I was like, well, that's what should have happened. So again, to stay on brand with that should have happened. I just kind of switched the story, and, he turns it around and says, do that again. Like, I wasn't ready, do that again. And then she kisses him again. So, and I've actually had that actually happen where I'm like, why are you wearing a hat, first of all? And turn it around. Let me get in there.
Or take off your sunglasses or whatever.
Yeah, I need access to you. You're in the way.
I have a question about you have these two books, Monogamy with Treats and Glitch, and one is like I would say what people probably think of when they think of like written erotica, more like story form, prose form. Glitch is more of like a collection of poetry. What draws you to poetry versus to like more longer form erotica, and how is that form of expression different, and what do they give you?
I think with poetry and just shorter prose, there's also a lot of dialogue, just, like the hat story that I just told. There's a lot of that. I think that what I like to do, my eyes are sort of always tuned to seeing things in an erotic way, not so much a sexual way, but just the intimacy of relationships and of people. You know, even like maternally, like, you know, a child with their mother. I'm always just kind of watching and looking and seeing, you know, the different connections that people have and that they make. And so the poetry and the dialogue and the prose really just comes a lot from that, where it doesn't necessarily come with a whole backstory with characters and all of that. It's more, you know, just kind of snippets through life. And so that's where Glitch came. I had a whole bunch of little things that, you know, I always had said, one day I'll put this in a book, or like this will be a cute conversation. It's a lot harder to do that, you know, to take something that you already have and like make it fit. So instead of trying to make all of those things, those little, you know, snippets fit, I was like, let me just publish it all together as just a collection. So that's that. When it comes to actually writing, you know, longer stories, that's, you know, where you really dive into the detail and you get into the backstories and the way the characters relate to each other. And so they're two totally different processes. And I mean, I guess what I get out of them is very different. Yeah, longer stories are fun because there is, you know, that in like that deeper story there. And with the poetry, yeah, it kind of, that comes almost more naturally because it's just really what I see.
Yeah.
Do you feel you write for you, or you write for someone else in particular, or just your audience?
Um, I like to say I write for everyone. No, I mean, I write a lot. Yeah, it's a very personal journey, I would say. It's a lot of, you know, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily looking to write for myself, but I do write what interests me and what I see. And yeah, and, you know, I hope that other people kind of relate to it. And yeah, I think that in writing, you know, the everyday little connections that people have, I think it is relatable, generally. So at least I hope.
Yeah. Amanda, you had a question, I think, around how, like, the transactional part of things,
Yeah.
the relationships, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna ask. So in August, we're talking about sex as a transaction. Um, I was kind of thinking about what are the transactions that take place in erotica. And in my mind, I saw like there's the reader and the writer, and this is kind of a transaction between them. Also, like the writer and the content as between them. Like the content is, they're going to this content to for a purpose, and it is that content giving them that. And then also the writer to the content. So like there's like a triangle, you know, of all these people using this content for things and giving something and receiving things in that process. And I was wondering if do you see other transactions that are taking place in this whole like triangle?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the feedback that I get kind of consistently is that, you know, someone read a passage of my work and then were able to have a conversation with their partner in real life. And so I would say absolutely there's a transaction between the characters and the people and the reader. Um, and then also it kind of, I mean, if they're able to then translate that into their own relationship, then it almost becomes like a three-way transaction between the reader, the character, and then the reader's partner. So even if they don't, you know, directly read the passage that is being referred to, if it helps that person have a conversation that they might not have been able to find the words for otherwise, you know, I think that's definitely one of perhaps a more intimate connection or transaction there.
Yeah, that's really cool and interesting, because I think some people can be hesitant to even show porn as an example of, like, hey, maybe you'd be into, want to try this or something.
Yeah.
But if they have kind of a script almost to go off of, but both in multiple ways. One, in the sense of like, hey, read this and tell me what you think. Like I could see that being an easier entry point, as well as like you just said, like, okay, I see how this played out. Maybe I can use some of these plot points and like try to pull them in either as dialogue play or whatever to explore something further. So that's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. Also, I like to always have, you know, in focusing on the consent conversations, I enjoy adding those into the actual dialogue between the characters. And so I think a lot of those, if you want me to get the book and I can read it.
Yeah, definitely.
Be right back. Okay, I just have to find it. But yeah, I mean, I think that for sure, being able to actually have an example of, even though it's fictional, to have the dialogue and to have the example of the conversation that you might be trying to have right in front of you that you can pull from. You don't necessarily need to have your partner read it, but it just, you know, I think a lot of these different conversations that people struggle having, erotica kind of provides a direct example of how they might have it. And so it's kind of, I mean, I don't set out for it to be advice, but I think that you can use it as that. So let me see. Okay, so in this story, this is in my book, Monogamy with Treats. It's the chapter Swinging By, and there's a couple that for the first time, they're celebrating something, and for the first time, he's taking her to a swingers club. And so it's her first time in any kind of sex club at all. And so on the way there, you know, he doesn't tell her where they're going. And he has her, you know, he gets her this little lingerie outfit and she puts it on. She's all excited. And so in the car, he has, you know, just an iPad and he pulls up the website of the club and there's like the FAQ section and this, you know, this whole thing. So she's looking through it as they're driving. And then they start to have a conversation about, you know, kind of fantasies and what they want out of the night and what they both want to expect and boundaries, safe words, the whole thing. So I think they get to safe words. Yeah, they definitely do. Okay, hold on. Okay. So I'll start with, they're in the car and he pulls his iPad out. So he smiled his beautiful smile at me, pulled his hand away and grabbed something from the back seat. He handed me his iPad with the web page open and told me my last instruction for the night was to review what was on the page and tell me what I thought. As I stared at the glowing page, I read across the top of the screen the word silk. As I scrolled down the page, I realized we were on our way to our first swingers club together, and immediately my pussy began to throb. I looked over at Noah, who was looking at the road, and just stared at him until I got his attention. When he finally glanced over at me, I gave him a devilish look. Baby, are you serious? We're really going to this place? Is that okay with you? His voice and face both showed concern. Okay, baby, this has secretly been on my bucket list to do together since forever. His shoulders relaxed. Beat you to it. He smiled and winked, then turned back to the road. Look it over so you can get an idea of what the place is like. It's the best swinger spot within 100 miles of us. We got about a half hour till we're there. As I scrolled through the pages of the site, I landed on the FAQ page, which was the most helpful. I had so many questions as I had never been to a swinger spot before. What will the people be like? Can you fuck anywhere, or are there special rooms for that? Is group sex allowed? Will there be single ladies, or do you need a man to enter? Will there be single men? I found most of my answers on the site. The rest I knew Noah and I would find out together. Neither of us had ever been to a swingers club, and so we were both surely in for a treat. He interrupted my search. Is there anything in particular that you'd like to try tonight? I looked over at him, a bit overwhelmed at the range of possible ways to answer his loaded question. My mind raced at the prospect of fucking in front of a bunch of strangers. It's always been a fantasy of mine to have people watch me have sex, I admitted. I can help you out with that, he promised, his fingers gently caressing my inner thigh. You've always liked being watched, huh? Always. There's something sexy to me about turning people on by being turned on. I don't want to just be watched. I want other people to want to fuck just by looking at me, and then I want them to fuck. Everywhere we go, people want to fuck just by looking at you. I'm excited to see them actually do it. What else? I want to stay with you the whole night. I think a great rule would be that we always play together, I added. I agree. If one of us says no, it's a no for both of us. We come first. Pun intended. I smiled over at Noah, who was already smiling at me. We both laughed. Okay, and what about things you aren't comfortable with? Any hard boundaries? Not really, just that we stick together. I think we should just play it by ear and see what finds us. As long as we're together, I think I'm okay with everything. Okay, let's have a safe word. That way, if either of us is uncomfortable, we can let the other one know. How about we ask each other the one? How about we ask the other one the question? Remember that time in Vegas? And that'll be our cue to shut it down. I tried to picture a scene in which I might find myself uncomfortable, and if I could see myself asking that question. It seemed cryptic enough and relevant, and also had a hint of warning to it, which I liked. I like it. It's soft, though, like a warning. How about that question as our yellow light? I'm comfortable with a hard stop being our word to shut things down. Okay, then, stop or no, whichever is more appropriate, no matter how into it the other one is. Deal, I concluded as Noah parked the car. We had arrived at our destination. Anyways, and then they go inside. And they have thank you. So it's definitely, you know, having that, it at least opens up the conversation or inspires someone to be able to kind of have that. So
and it normalizes that conversation, you know, especially when it's in like a lot of media we consume, as you said earlier, like doesn't involve like consent or like verbalized consent in any way. And then people are like, think that body language can be assumed intent, like, and you know, all of those issues come in.
Or I think a lot of people just don't realize that it can actually be fun and, you know, sexy, and, you know, it could be something that brings you guys closer together rather than this awkward, you know, conversation that no one really wants to have, you know. And I think that also, you know, my books focus on couples and relationships that are already established. And I think that when you have something that's established, oftentimes you think, oh, well, they talk about that behind closed doors. So like it's already assumed or it's already been talked about, rather than actually including it in an erotica book. And then you can have your characters literally do whatever you want them to do, because there has already been that established trust between the two of them. And the reader's not left wondering, I wonder if they're actually into that, or, you know, they're playing with this person or that. So especially when you're talking about non-monogamy and swinging and that kind of stuff, inviting other people in, you know, I think to me, it's very important that I go there and that I have those, you know, have the conversations happen between the characters, so that, I don't know, it kind of frees me to be able to put them in crazy situations. So.
Yeah, you have consent from them.
Yeah.
It's something I think creators of erotica and porn commonly don't think about, is like, yeah, might be writing for an adult audience, but youth and kids still get their hands on this stuff, as we probably well know, of how what we got our hands on whenever we were younger. And in forgetting that part of it, and forgetting that these kind of conversations do need to be continuously brought up, it's how we've set these unhealthy foundations mentally. So like, if there was some, you know, we have like ingredient warnings and like other like warnings and labels on other things that can harm us or influence us. If we had these like fundamental structures, it was like, cool, like produce all the erotica and porn one might want to, but at least have it be constructive, have it be consensual, like teach these basic or include these basic things, because whether it's intended to or not, this is educational material.
It's true. It's very true, you know. And even porn, I mean, I think that sometimes part of the allure of certain genres of porn is that they don't have those conversations, because they aren't always sexy, and you like, you know, there's different fantasies, different kinks that people have that are perhaps a little bit more taboo, and the point is that they're taboo. So, oftentimes it does kind of ruin it if you're going to include that. But I think that's why for me, visual porn, just traditional porn, is just, it's unrealistic, because those conversations in real life should be happening. And, they have to happen, as far as I'm concerned. And so, yeah, I mean, not that I want a child picking up any of my books, but I almost feel comfortable now that, just you saying that I'm kind of getting consent from even these fictional characters, it allows me to be like, it wouldn't be the worst thing, because at least there are those conversations that can, provide perhaps what a child, I mean, I don't want to say children, but someone who hasn't had that education, at least there is a little bit of that in there, and they're able to get that if they happen to have their hands on my book. So
yeah, I mean, imagine if even just half of the porn consumed had those kind of conversations. At least you'd be getting half of your foundations. Like, you'd at least get a good amount of content that says like that should happen, instead of it never existing. So I majorly applaud you for that being in your work. I think it's crucial and important to talk about as an encouragement for others, and for an encouragement for people to read your work specifically.
Yeah. And to go back also to the carnal theory, I think that's, in my having those conversations, or having the characters have those conversations, it allows for the exploration of kinks to happen. I think, the best way to introduce a kink, for example, to someone who you've never maybe had the conversation with, is, through examples. And so picking up a book that has a conversation in it, or, it just, that allows, if you're not having those conversations, you're never really going to get what you want, really. You might stumble into it, but I think that, the reason why I presented that as a theory is because I think without the intentionality of those conversations around what you want and around your desires, or, something that you might want to even try, you're rarely going to get there. You might get, you might stumble upon a partner who kind of takes your hand and leads you in, but I think the chances of that happening are a lot less than, actually being direct. And a lot of people don't either feel comfortable or don't know how to be that direct. So I think that, I don't know, generally a bunch of people are walking around with these, kind of half-realized desires that they have, because they don't really know what to do with them. So.
And kind of, we had, you had mentioned like trust and trusting with your partners. Last month we talked about privacy and trust. And I think like a huge part of that is inner trust, and like not quite knowing if I don't feel like I have the tools to have those conversations, like I don't trust myself in a situation to make the right decisions for myself, and for my partner, let alone like the person that I'm interacting with. And so I think it's really important to have these tools or these examples that we can use to maybe start learning, what do I want? How do I explain that? How do I maybe not stand up for yourself, but like, how do you stick to your own boundaries, I guess, and verbalize those boundaries, and trusting yourself to be able to verbalize like a safe word, or like, I want to stop it now. Cause like entering it, yeah, that's like one thing, but then like once you're there, it can also be really scary to be like, oh, I'm now uncomfortable with this. And so being able to trust yourself to verbalize when you are not comfortable anymore.
Mm-hmm. And I think also just, realizing that you can always change your mind. I think a lot of people think that once they throw something out there, there's no returning. And it's like, you have to definitely, there's a great fear of the unknown when you do bring up a topic such as this, because it's super vulnerable. And, a lot of us, I think, don't have the tools or the verbiage to be able to talk about it. And so, they might have this desire and they want to go for it and they're trying to be subtle. I'm always like, fuck subtle, go there, because the most, there's only one, to me, if you're trying to ask for something that you want, you got to be direct. I know that that's not everyone's speed or everyone's fashion, but knowing that you can always backtrack, also reassuring yourself and your partner, like this doesn't need to be something that we do right away. I definitely think it should be kind of a conversation that happens over, perhaps several conversations. And I think that builds the trust so that it's not so scary to talk about.
Yeah, these are all really good tools and tips and scripts
Yeah.
to help. Thank you so much for coming and joining us today, Peekaboo. Can you share again the theory that you've brought?
Yes, it is that people are generally more kinky than they allow themselves to believe or are willing to admit to themselves or others.
Cool. So I'm curious from our listeners, feel free to chime in if when you heard that from the top of the show and then hear it again at the end, if any of your perceptions have changed. Peekaboo, thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in, everyone. We hope this episode has given you something further to reflect upon. And definitely, as Eva said, reach out if you feel you found any insights. If you have any questions, you can do so on our Instagram page at Carnal Theory. And please check out Peekaboo's work. You can go to peekaboocollins.com or follow her on all platforms at Peekaboo Collins. And her books are available for purchase now on Amazon. Thank you.
Carnal Theory is produced by My Sex Bio. Our sound design is by Audrey Cohane, and our theme music by Men the Universe. My Sex Bio is an educational platform built to empower people like you to take command of your sexual biography. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, and Spotify at My Sex Bio. Visit our website and join our e-letter at mysexbio.org and support our work by joining our Patreon. Thank you.